Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new episode of the Interrupter podcast. First of all, my apologies with a bit of a summer break, but we're gonna make up for it with a fantastic special guest today, Georgina Morello, author of the book Whispers from the Universe. And for the purposes of transparency, we are a couple for more than 4 years. I was a little bit involved with the book as well, so I may be a little bit biased. So, first of all, Georgina, what's the book about?
That's a very good question. So, the book is a book of transformation. It's a collection of my lived experiences, my stories, my life-changing stories, stories of transformation, of course based on my life. And how all of this series of moments and events led me to live a life that felt more authentic, felt more alive, and there's more meaning in my life.
Yeah, so basically the first part is about your particular path, no?
It's my story, yes.
Your story, your life story.
So it's an autobiography, but purely based on my stories of transformation. I need to make that clear.
Yeah. And then also you have, like, you call it musings, no?
Yes, like it's divided in 2 sections. The first section, as we've said, is my story of discovery and nurturing those relationships with not only myself, but the self in others, and nature and the universe. And after, I go into all the different universal themes.
Okay. So what we're going to do in this podcast is we will not keep a chronological structure. We will just talk about some selected topics, no? We may not cover the complete book, but at least we try to give the viewers a bit of an impression what this is about, what they can expect, no? Maybe a good idea, Jeannie, is that I start with a quote from your introduction, where you say, "Spirituality is homegrown, just like one's attitude. Spirituality is an individual practice that constantly changes and evolves as we turn inward and awaken the superhuman powers that exist within us all." Mm-hmm. Going back 25 years, I was a humble beginner to the world of spirituality. My starting point was admitting that I didn't know what spirituality was, but that could not have been further from the truth, because over the years I've realized that every time I heard or read anything to do with spirituality that moved me, it was nothing less than a subtle awakening of my soul. I wasn't learning anything new, I was rather remembering what has always existed within.
Absolutely. I was waking up after a very long sleep. So I just felt that part of me, critical part of me, was missing. And that was, this voyage, this extraordinary voyage of discovery, of exploration, and literally finding myself and finding meaning to life and so forth. So big questions.
Yeah, these are big topics, of course. And maybe we should specify, So we're talking about spirituality in the sense of, let's say, non-dogmatic spirituality, no?
Well, what is spirituality? Let's unpack spirituality.
It's a difficult
because
word.
It means different things to different people. I mean, broadly speaking, we can agree that spirituality is about us being part of something much bigger than ourselves, and also about connections. It's all about connections, again, with ourselves, with everybody around us, and everything in the universe.
So
it boils down to that.
So basically also it covers a domain which goes beyond the materialistic world, no? And which I think you described it well. You said it's about all the inner. It's about the inner world, not so much the external world.
Well, there's a whole fantastic universe to be explored within ourselves too.
Absolutely. And I think personally in this society we live in today in the West, unfortunately, the consensus is to look externally, to look outside for everything, for happiness, for love. We are taught to actually look outside of ourselves rather than looking inside.
Yeah, we have loads of layers of conditioning. There's cultural beliefs. There's learned behavior from family. There's pressure from peers. And I guess, we all want to find answers, but unfortunately we always look externally rather than turning within. And all the answers are inside of us. The transformers are inside.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to come back to this particular topic later on.
All right.
And I maybe just quote you again. It's on page 3. Just to maybe close this topic for now. Maintaining spirituality can and should be life-changing. In my case, spirituality and universal power shifted my life and saved me. And that's not an exaggeration. It's as real as it gets, as will be revealed forthwith. So here you're setting the tone basically for explaining and describing your journey.
Yes.
From a teenager in Gibraltar to the woman you are today.
Yes. We start more or less in my teens when I was about 16, and things that happened at that time in my life and how those had ramifications, emotional ramifications and mental ramifications on my life, and the story after that.
Yeah. So your youth and your childhood, you would say, generally speaking, was very positive, no?
Absolutely. I had a brilliant life when I was little. I remember always being full of life, always being treated to the best holidays with my parents, my loving parents, always playing with my siblings. We're always happy. We're always shining bright until I was 16 and I went through an abusive chapter in my life.
Yeah.
And so I abandoned myself. Unfortunately, I was paralyzed. I was immobilized by shame, by, drama, by gossip, by being judged. And so I started bottling everything inside. And of course, it's not going to take you anywhere good. But at the time, I didn't have that self-awareness. So for me, the natural thing to do was sweep it under the carpet, and my denial, my ego, had masked that, and just spiraled out of control, and I was suffering from extreme sadness, I guess. And I started isolating myself. I started detaching myself from everything that I used to do, my friends, my connections. So ultimately, I abandoned God. At the time, I'd been brought up in a Christian Catholic family. And so I couldn't believe that I had been betrayed by God. And also I had betrayed myself. But of course, at the age of 16, I didn't understand that there were second chances.
Yeah.
I was a perfectionist at heart. And possibly there's good things in perfectionism. But unfortunately then I just went for the jugular. And so I saw the birth of my self-saboteur. And they just went for, the jugular.
So you also blamed yourself, even though you shouldn't have, and you had feelings of guilt and shame, like you said, no? And all this led you to,
Well, I couldn't believe I'd been so stupid. I couldn't believe that I'd been coerced, that I trusted my perpetrator. And I just could not forgive myself.
Yeah.
It boils down to forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't applying radical kindness to myself. I just didn't know how to.
Yeah. And at school you were always very good, and nobody around you really realized what was going on, is it? I mean, everybody thought, she may have some problems people have when they reach puberty.
Everybody struggles. They put it down. My parents put it down to teen hormones, I guess. And when people tried to help, I kind of snapped at them and did not want to open up. Not that I didn't want to open up, I just couldn't open up. I felt choked. I didn't have a voice. I felt so ashamed of myself. I thought, that I had to take accountability of my actions, and I had unfortunately done wrong. And so I just did not want to share this with anybody. I didn't want to be judged.
Yeah. And maybe I read this quote. It's page 18. Deep down, I had a very low sense of self-esteem. I was still feeling highly vulnerable, and I believed more in others than I believed in myself. The recent events in my life were poisoning my thoughts and knocking my confidence as I played them over and over again in my head, totally unaware of the damage I was inflicting upon myself. So and that's, for example, quickly a bad habit one can develop, no? You start to overthink, you start to look for answers which you can't find in that moment, and you can come a bit off the path, let's say, no?
I lost complete control of my life, and I'll tell you why. Because I was no longer present. I was no longer anchored in the here and now. I was just thinking and constantly caught up in that loop of shame, of blame, of feeling like a failure because I had failed myself. And so I was my worst critic.
Would you say, love, that this turned a bit into like self-hate almost?
It was. I did hate myself. I could not look at myself in the mirror for years.
So like for many years, you had to suffer from the effects from those events before, no?
I remember crying a lot. Every day I'd cry. I'd lock myself in the bathroom. Nobody realized, but I did. I cried in silence. I was just licking my scars and, my drama. I felt I was a victim. So things were always happening to me. And I just didn't understand how I could grow from that and see it as a lesson to be learned, for instance, and to hug the pain and use that pain and transform that pain into positive energy and become a better person. I just didn't get it at the time. I just felt so ill.
Yeah.
And I was developing really bad habits, sleeping habits. I couldn't sleep. I was feeling very anxious. There are times I couldn't leave the house. I remember finishing work and rushing home. I remember wearing huge glasses because I didn't want anybody to look into my eyes because they would probably see the pain I was in and the suffering. But there was just no self-awareness. And
like you said before, it turned into some kind of spiritual crisis, really, no?
Absolutely.
And maybe I read this quote, page 21. In retrospect, I was craving deeper meaning and purpose. I yearned to arouse other parts of me and discover the beauty and power of real love at all levels. But more so, I wanted to be understood. And I got neither. I was clinging on to my material possessions and other people with desperate effort, nurturing my emotional attachments to them.
I wasn't feeling aligned. I didn't feel loved. Why? Because I wasn't loving myself, and self-care and self-love are so important. This came later, of course.
Yeah.
But it was the process of turning within and discovering and trying to befriend and connect with myself first and foremost. I just hated myself, and this is a word I don't use.
No.
I don't use the word hate because it's just too strong. And so I was doing this on my own. I simply could not open up and let anybody in. I was suffering so much and I just did not understand. And there were times I actually had suicidal thoughts because I was in such pain that I just wanted to heal. I just didn't know how to.
Yeah, but we come to all the positivity in a minute.
Absolutely.
I can't wait.
Of course.
But before we get to this, we need to talk a bit about the suffering as well, I guess, no?
Yes, of course.
And maybe I read this one. So, unaware of it at the time, I was feeling the ego mind, that insatiable part of the psyche that loves destroying everything in its path. And worse still, I stepped aside. Okay. All right. Let's go to the positive part.
When I start listening to those whispers.
Yeah.
I mean, you can call it intuition, you can call it God, you can call it whatever you feel comfortable with. But ultimately, there is a higher self. And if we start listening, it will take us and it will guide us through life. And it's all about recognizing and working on that sensitivity to pick up those inner whispers and listen to them and grow.
Yeah. Maybe you want to read this part. I think it's a really good quote.
So everything about these conversations felt right. I call them universal whispers. I felt safe, as if I had nothing to lose. And I was able to let go and listen to my initial response without overthinking. It was that simple. The noises from my ego mind, insecurities, fear, worries, doubts, anxiety and stress were louder. But my intuition was always faster and clearer.
So basically, you had a bit of a, spiritual awakening, no?
There was very little awakenings at the beginning, with the strongest one happening in 2015. And that was perhaps, the biggest life-changing moment, which is the chapter where we start in the book.
The quantum moment.
My intimate moment with the universe.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. And I find it amazing how you expressed this in words.
Now, it wasn't easy, because I'll tell you what, it wasn't until years later that I could put it into words, because these are experiences that go beyond the human experience.
Yes.
It's on a different level. So it's very difficult to explain. It's indescribable feelings and shifts and warmth. And so it took me a long time to put this together.
Yeah.
This was one of the last chapters that I added to the book and put it at the front.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to start on a beautiful note.
And,
on a transformational, life-changing moment.
Yeah, and I find it amazing in general, as you know, love, that when you look at your path, you did everything on your own. You had no guidance, you had no, structure around your, maybe people who, would have given you a hand back then. So you did it all on your own.
Well, in all fairness, I went to see an occupational therapist back in, I think, 2004. And I just wanted to check in and see what, whether I was on the right path. And I remember the lady telling me that, everything I was doing was absolutely right. I was journaling. I was working on my self-awareness, asking myself important questions, trying to befriend myself, trying to make sense of what the problem was, where I was trying to go, and how I was going to get there. And she said to me, look, you're on the right path. You don't need to see me.
Yeah, love, I feel, as you know, that, for example, psychology only gets you so far. If you ask me. Life coaching and analyzing your life and so on only gets you so far. I think the missing link is what we talked at the beginning, the spirituality. Look, the word itself, I'm not a big fan.
Yes,
it's like
there's a misconception about spirituality.
Exactly. Maybe in the future we'll find a better word for it, but for now, because people like to use it.
But I think that nowadays many people associate spirituality only with the stress management techniques.
Yeah, or like New Age.
And
this
yoga.
is not New Age.
And there's just so much more. It's a way of living. It's an attitude.
Yes.
It's a way of being. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of embodying your emotions. It's a way of life.
Absolutely, and
it's
I think
not a switch on button and a switch off button that you use when you go to, you want to be spiritual.
Yeah.
You either are spiritual inclined or you're not. If you want to accept, because of course spirituality is accessible to everybody. This is not hocus pocus.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very important point. Everybody has it within themselves. They can reach this inner world. It's not, something which is limited to any particular religion or belief system or ideology or,
faith,
culture.
Absolutely.
It's something, and also maybe to clarify, personally, I'm not a big fan of this word New Age. I would say this stuff is
individuality.
Yeah, I would say this stuff. Yeah, this stuff is post New Age. I would say that we're not talking anymore about like the 60s, 70s. Where for example, the West discovered Eastern ways of thinking. We are talking about something more universal. More general. Yeah, like more universal. More generic. Maybe I don't like that word neither, but you know what I mean. Like it doesn't come in a particular color. It's wider.
No, and every journey is unique to holder.
Yes,
we're all on our respective journeys. And one thing we shouldn't do is compare ourselves to any other person's journey, because we're all different. We've all undergone, different paths. We've all got different layers, shall we say, of conditioning, of learned behavior, and so forth.
Maybe as a footnote, love, we can also talk about different tools in that context. You know, some people, they use meditation, others they mindfulness maybe, and you also talk about this in the book a lot, no?
Well, the thing is that the next book, because this book is the first of 3, so this is a trilogy, and so the next book, called Awakened Living, it focuses on all these life hacks, tips, rituals, exercises, techniques that have worked for me on all levels.
But in this book you already cover some of them.
I cover a few, yes, I introduce you to many of the techniques that I used.
So basically, is it correct, love, if I would summarize that part in the sense of also looking at the quantum moment, that without maybe consciously being aware and knowing what you're doing, you are kind of intuitively finding your own awakening by redefining after this period of crisis and darkness.
Yes.
And this kind of led to some kind of awakening which you went through on your own.
Yes, because there was something missing in my life. There was a piece of the puzzle, shall we say, and I needed to find that piece. I knew I would not stop until it made sense. And life was just not making sense.
Yeah. And I think it's an important point, because sometimes you give me credit for bringing you knowledge, but the truth is that before we met, you already went through the whole thing on your own, isn't it? Like when we met, then we achieved maybe other levels.
Yes.
But maybe, in order for us to meet also, it was necessary that we both on our own went through our own challenges.
Well, I think we met at the right time. The universe conspired to bring us together right at that time.
See, we come to that also.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe I just read this little quote to move to the next part. I soon experienced another subtle shift within the walls of my heart. You read it.
This move didn't happen overnight, though. It was rather an ongoing process of self-purification. There were purposefulness of flow and energy in my being. And one day, I felt my heart smiling, and my heart smiled back. Overwhelmed with gratitude, the fear leader within had finally subsided, and I was rejoicing in this new supreme connection that I never imagined possible. There was a mutual understanding of emotional and soulful intimacy between the universe and me. And by intimacy, I am referring to truth-telling. We trusted each other implicitly, and just as importantly, I was finally living from a deeper sense of who I was. Woohoo!
Okay, so, however, unfortunately, after that positive development, something really bad happened at some point. I'm jumping here a bit, but let's talk about Joe.
Oh, Joe, one of my besties, yes. About 8 years ago, Joe left us, and unfortunately, it was suicide by hanging, and it was probably the biggest punch into my soul, and I just went numb. I remember just falling to my knees, just feeling as if somebody had just switched me off, because sunshine, it was dark inside. There was no longer sunshine in my heart, and it was an experience that changed my life, and out of that pain I have so much gratitude, because on the other side of that extreme pain was the extreme happiness too. And I lost my best friend, but I gained 2 best friends. So Natalia, who's Joe's wife, widow, she became one of my besties too, and we also developed a beautiful relationship with Willa, and so that keeps us together, and we just stuck together since, like a rock.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, no? Like, despite that event, that you three have such a special bond.
Yes. Thankfully, remember that I'd been on my voyage, shall we say, for some time. And so at that point, I was able to hug the pain. I was able to learn because pain was my teacher. And so I was able to let go, to forgive, to release that pain and turn it back into beautiful energy. And Natalia and Willa are like sisters.
Yeah.
They're my soul sisters.
Absolutely. And Joe was also a poet, no? And
He was indeed. He was indeed. And the great thing is that we are always talking about him.
yes.
Oh, he's always present with us.
Maybe you want to read this poem, love, which you put in the book?
Yes, yeah. So he wrote 2 poems for me when I was 30 and when I turned 33. And the one that I include in the book is the one he wrote when I turned 33, which I'd love to share with you. So, dismiss time, that subtle spoiler of youth. It dares not insult beauty's aging face, not search that sparkle in those eyes they gaze, away all fading faults of mortal truth. But shine they do with infant glow, that does reflect the child in you, who wins in smiles and dazzles the few, whose fortune on earth they charm bestow, and on them cheeks they tinge that paint, with lovely hues the inner heart, whose transit splendour well does impart all goodly grace of a timeless saint. This, dear, what's a mere 33, when from time's grasp thy beauty is free. Joseph Beaton, 2007. And he recited that at my party, because I had a party at the Mount in Gibraltar, and we have that recorded.
Ah, yeah?
So this is something that, you know, I keep very close to my heart.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I think we leave this chapter at that.
All right.
But I think it was good, you know, that you included it in the book, and it's very important as well because, I mean, there were dark periods, no?
But that's beautiful because I tell you what, after that, it was life-changing. Why? Because it helped to soften my heart, and I did open up.
Yes, maybe because you saw what can happen as well, no? And you thought, maybe I don't want to go down this path.
Absolutely. And so I connected with my family.
Yeah.
And so I worked on all of those connections, and it brought me not only closer to Natalia and Willa, but also to everyone around me at home.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like you say, love, no, always a silver lining in the cloud.
There's always a silver lining, absolutely. But you have to, it's an attitude. You have to look for the silver lining. Things happen for you, not to you. You know, you're never going to be punished for your anger. You'll be punished by your anger. So let it go, you know?
Yeah.
Let go of those fears, let go of that ego mind.
That's a big part of spirituality, no? Like letting go.
Taming, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And maybe that's a good quote as well on page 103, where you say, "Let me make it clear that I'm in no way enshrining myself, nor do I have any narcissistic tendencies. Please don't make the mistake of confusing my wakefulness and passion with egotism and narcissism. I can only describe the energy running through my veins as an aliveness married into a bold internal presence, a mighty powerful strength of thought mixed with a spirit filled to the brim with joy, and a heart cascading with happiness. It's a supreme fusion and mighty connection with the universe. When I'm aligned, I feel as if I am the universe, and as if my human form is only the instrument by which the world manifests itself through me."
Yeah.
That's a very nice way of putting it. I couldn't put it better myself. Maybe you want to read this thought on page 110. I found this interesting also, what you said before.
Well, yes, because at the end of the day, we're talking about a lifestyle, and it's sort of about a mindset.
Yeah.
It's an attitude. It's a perspective. And so we certainly can't do anything about the length of our journey here on earth other than taking care of ourselves and leading a healthy lifestyle. And by healthy, remember, it's bodily health, but also spiritual health and mindful health.
Psychological and emotional
yes.
and cognitive. No, there are many levels. It's
Yes.
not only one. It's like, a multi-level approach.
However, what we can do is enhance the quality of our journey.
Yeah.
So it's the depth, it's meaning, it's the flavor. This is what you can enhance. And this is what I'm working on every day. Because remember that spirituality is, you're in it for the long run. This is not something that you do for 2 days and then you switch off and say, all right, okay, this is not
so
me
you're
anymore.
saying also that you can't really control what may happen to you in this life, but you can control how you react to what's happening.
Absolutely. So your behavior, your reactions, and your thoughts and your feelings, yes, those you can work with.
Yeah, and that's a big part of spirituality, I would say. And like you say, also, you said before, the ego mind, we all have this in us, no? We all have, we are persons, we have an ego, and it can take us also to dark places, and we will always have an ego, but we need to learn to manage it, I would say. How would you put it?
Well, if you operate from a place of warmth, if you're operating and you're feeling your way through life, you're feeling with the heart rather than just listening to the mind plays loads of tricks.
Yeah.
And so you need to infuse your life with optimism, with positivity, with affirmations, with pep. You need to pep talk yourself. Because life isn't easy at the end of the day,
Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting topic, so maybe we elaborate a bit on this. It's a bit like higher self versus ego, no? Mm-hmm. Your higher self coming from universal love,
yes,
and your ego coming...
wants to separate.
Yes, like oneness versus separation, no?
Yes.
It's like your ego says, I want this.
Yes. You need to let go of the I, the my, and the mine. I, me, and myself. If you're ready to release those, then you're in a good place.
Yes, no? But at the same time, let's also be clear, love. I mean, we will always have an ego as long as we exist as persons, no?
Yes, as long as you keep it tamed and disciplined, and you can regulate your emotions, you're fine. Because ultimately also, our ego is also what makes us different to everybody else. So it's our individuality, it's our passion, it's our creativity. So in those terms, yes, you need to embrace your ego. You just need to keep it under wraps.
Yeah, and I think on page 111 you put a nice quote from Dandapani.
Yeah.
It's your choice to make your mind a heaven or hell to live in.
You've got a choice.
Yeah.
What we do have in this life is a choice.
Can you maybe read this part? I think that's also a very nice conclusion to this topic.
Yes.
Page 113.
So separating the ego mind and my true nature. Yeah. So the less conscious and aware we are of our internal and external reality, the more we channel our energy towards separation, which is what we've just been saying, stagnation or even destruction. So beware, you have been warned. The ego is insatiable. It's craving more and more external gratification. And its demands keep on growing as you nourish it, robbing you of harmony and blocking your pathway with unnecessary hurdles and endless mind tricks. It loves the material world and lures you into with the tangible sensory pleasures in life. Its ultimate goal for you is to seek happiness outside of yourself and get entangled in a vicious circle of always wanting more.
So let's stay there for a bit, because that's what we discussed at the beginning, no?
Yeah.
And I think that's really a big topic, especially in today's world, because I don't know how you feel. I feel that, this is exactly this society, maybe also because of the capitalist system. Maybe because, we live in a society where cognition is big, rationality, logic, being a head person rather than a heart person. That is basically what we worship in this society, and that one has to develop some awareness about that, because it has been different when you look at history. There have been other cultures where it was different, but in this culture we live today, yes, at least in the West, we are definitely shaped by the fact that we live in a capitalist system, that we worship knowledge, rationality, logic. And don't get me wrong, it has brought us a long way. It has given us scientific development, technological development. It has also changed our lives for the better. It's not only negative. That's not what I'm saying. But I think on the negative side, unfortunately, we lost a lot of our inner knowledge in that process.
I think we have an overload of stimuli. External stimuli, and we are getting pulled in every single direction. You have to the must read, the must watch, the must buy, all these musts, all right? And people really don't know where to go anymore, when all we need to do is go within. And you keep on, society pulls us out. And the soul, spirit, pulls us in.
And we were talking the other day, love, that often with social media and all these things, we see, for example, girls, feeling I'm not beautiful enough, I'm not good enough.
Yes.
Men feeling I'm not rich enough, not successful enough. So people start to have the feeling of, I'm not enough. Yes. And that, creates a whole range of different problems in society, which we can see today, which distances people away from their inner truth, the higher self, no?
But this is why you need to have alignment between your physical body, your spiritual practice, and your mental state, and your emotional state. You need to work on all areas.
Why doesn't school teach us that,
I think they have. We've come a long way now. I mean, back in the day when I was in school, all of these terms, we didn't even know what it was.
Yeah, I have to say,
But nowadays, there's a lot of mindfulness going on at schools. So there's, of course, a lot more than can be done. But I think we've come a long way too.
Yeah, I agree with that also. And don't get me wrong, love. As you know, personally, I'm also very optimistic in general. I think this time we live in is amazing. It's a time of awakening,
Yes,
I think
there's a collective awakening happening now.
There are both things happening at the same time. That's what confuses people. On the one hand, you see many people, being more aware, being more mindful, being more spiritual. And then you see also big parts of society going completely the other way, getting consumed by this whole world of consumption and getting a high and being entertained and
external gratification.
Yes, all these kind of things. And but I think this time we live in is absolutely amazing. And maybe we dive a bit also into this topic on page 120. You talk about forgiveness. I think that's also important.
Look, I think the best gift you can ever give yourself is self-forgiveness. Because once that happens, you get out of the rut, shall we say, because normally you get stuck, and it's because you aren't able to apply radical kindness to yourself, compassion, empathy, and it's all about the self-care. And I think that COVID has really amplified this, and people are turning within, they're taking they're asking themselves many questions. They're trying to, they're doing their own process of truth telling to a degree, and it's helping us grow.
Yeah, I think also, again, there were positive as well as negative aspects.
Sure.
Many people, I feel, love, that because suddenly the hamster wheel was stopped, people suddenly reflected and became a bit more aware.
Yes.
Which maybe they would have never done, without that.
We've been able to slow down. We've been able to listen to those inner whispers.
Yeah.
And some people have taken action.
Yes. Can you also explain synchronicity a bit more? That's one of my favorite topics, as you know.
Yes. So along the way, of course, we'll be talking about listening to the inner whispers, but also working on our level of sensitivity, because there are signs, there are things that are happening all around you.
Yeah.
But if you are not awake, in a state of wakefulness, and you are not receiving these messages.
You may not even see them, even though they're in front of your eyes.
Yeah, I didn't see them many years ago, but now I do. And I see them all the time.
And
so it will guide you through life. And I feel that I'm actually going from, stepping stones. I'm hopping from one stone to the next, and it's through synchronicity.
Yeah.
I find myself, I'm feeling my way through life. Sometimes logic, of course, logic makes sense in life, and you probably make right decisions using logic, but some things are not logical.
Yeah.
And still you need to listen to them.
Exactly, and why do you want to discard them just because they don't fit in your little science box, no?
Well,
if they exist, no? And look here, on page 166 you say, as narrated, we are not only physical beings, but also energetic ones. Everything, even our thoughts, consist of energy. So through our thoughts, we send energetic vibrations out into the universe. And the world sends signals back to us in a variety of ways. And maybe if I tell the story, you remember when on our little roof terrace, there was this dragonfly coming back.
Yes.
So, look, maybe this sounds too loopy, but I will tell it anyway. So, for some reason which we can't explain, in our spiritual progress also, which we experience together, there was a time period where, in a pretty random point in time in the year, you remember, love, there was this dragonfly coming every single morning, sitting on this plant.
And just looking at us.
Looking and then leaving, and every single morning. And there was no pond around, nothing.
Nothing, yeah.
And, this is an example, because some people may say, okay, can you give us concise examples? What is it, synchronicity? I would say, love, it's like little messages from the universe.
From the universe, yeah. Nudges, kisses,
yeah,
pokes, whatever you want to call them.
But it is, to be very concise, it can be even a friend of you saying something to you where you really feel inside, oh, that was really truthful and I needed to hear that. So the universe kind of talking through a person, or it can be a butterfly, flying towards you. Now, of course, we're not talking about being completely delusional, but if you are, I would put it this way, love, maybe you can tell your own spin on it. If you develop in spiritual terms, you become more and more sensitive towards these things.
Absolutely.
And you recognize them. It's not on a logical level, like you said before. That's really important. It's not on a rational level. It's on a level of inner truth.
Yes.
You know that there's a deeper meaning to something.
You need to be open-minded, but also open-hearted.
Yeah, great. That's a great way of putting it.
Because many people are open-minded,
yeah,
but the heart is closed.
Very good point.
So how are those synchronicities? How are you going to listen to them if you're not operating from a place of warmth and intelligence?
Absolutely. I would even go further. You could almost define different categories. There are head people who are thinking all the time. There are heart people who are more about emotions.
Yes.
I think if you want to be more complete, it's good if on all areas you have some awareness. And then once you develop it, then suddenly you will see all these beautiful things. You remember, love, then we went one day and suddenly there were like these hundreds of dragonflies.
Oh yeah, they were migrating from Spain into...
Crazy, no?
Yes.
But, can you give other examples? It can also be...
signs, numbers, for instance.
Numbers, yeah.
Yeah. There's some people, so I was seeing the number 9, 1909.
Yeah.
The quadruple ones.
Yeah.
So those are little signs that the shift is coming, and you have to keep at it.
It's like a bit like confirmation that you're on the right path.
Yeah.
Something like that, I would say.
Oh, yeah, so bumping into somebody that I hadn't seen in ages, but thinking of them or dreaming of them, and then seeing them the next morning.
Yeah.
Or finding a white feather.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, if you think this is Tulupi, even Carl Jung has written a lot about this topic, who was one of the most popular psychologists, okay? So this is not as far out as people may think.
No.
If you ask me.
It's not outlandish at all.
But at the same time, I guess, be careful that you don't imagine things all the time neither, no? How would you say that? Like, don't get completely caught up about this.
No, you need to
appreciate it.
It's your interpretation also.
Yeah.
So you need to mull those over. You can journal and write down your thoughts.
Right. Let's talk about that.
Go back to them. So
the journaling. So that's very accessible.
That's
I think
part and parcel of spirituality. For from where I'm standing, I've used journaling all my life.
Can you explain what do you exactly mean with journaling?
Journaling, just not thinking and writing whatever it is that comes to mind, and having an open heart and just writing whatever it is. Sometimes it's long sentences, other times it's just an idea, just not holding back. Like
expressing it?
Yes.
By putting it black on white on paper?
Black on white on paper, yeah.
And so not necessarily like a diary, but, just...
It's truth-telling.
Truth-telling, yeah.
And it's sanative, because...
And we both do it a lot, no? When we got together, we were so entertained because we both have our little books and stuff where we write.
And it's a safe zone, you can write whatever you want.
Yeah.
You're not going to judge yourself. Nobody's going to be looking at these. You're not going to feel stupid. Just open your heart and just pour whatever it is that's inside, your feelings, your thoughts, anything that's bugging you, anything. Write it down. And that can help you to develop like awareness, no? Self-awareness. Therapeutic. Because to make it again a bit more concise and not to talk, You're learning about yourself. You're learning about who you are. You're learning about your thought patterns. Yeah. How you think, and it's helping you understand who you are. Yeah. So, and only part of this process is like a mind-driven process, no? Where you think and you come from a thinking perspective. The other part again is like feeling, as well as again, no, on a spiritual level. Like these are all, and maybe I don't know, maybe it's a good idea to also
cover all these different aspects. Otherwise, you know what happens? People come only from one perspective, you know?
Yeah, sure,
For example, what happens? They sit there, they overanalyze. That's not what we're talking about.
No, not at all.
That's what many people do.
It's
You know,
not about
they take
thinking. It's not about thinking. It's allowing that flow of thought on paper. You must not overanalyze. It's just letting go.
Yeah, again.
And just allowing that fluidity of thoughts and just coming out.
Exactly. And also, because what many of us did or do is the opposite. They overthink. They think about the past, the future. They don't live in the present. And then they write, I need this, I need to improve this, I need to lose weight, I need to earn more, I need to...
But you can be very present and, and write about what you are feeling, what you are thinking, what you are sensing, because the senses come... We haven't spoken about the 5 senses, but these are very important in any voyage.
Yeah.
Of inner transformation.
Let's talk about that.
So, you need to, it's not only a sensory experience that we have to embrace,
Yeah. I mean, without going too far off topic, I always say, look, science just discovers now we have a pineal gland. In the middle of our brain, there is this little part of the brain, which in ancient cultures was called the third eye. It's not new to us. But now science starts to discover that, within this part of your brain, a whole lot is happening, and thanks God we have more consciousness research these days, and we're just starting to explore all the different layers a person actually has, no? Mm-hmm. And like you say, it goes far beyond just the physical that you can feel and see and smell and taste. It goes far beyond all that, no?
But for me, possibly the biggest life-changing moment in the course of, my journey has to be letting go of the past, reconciling the past, letting go.
Yeah.
We talked about the self-forgiveness and then the self-care regime and applying radical kindness and empathy, compassion. It's okay not to feel okay.
And I think for you, love, a big topic was also to rediscover self-love, no?
Yes, but it was anchoring myself in the here and now and feeling and allowing to be led and to lose yourself in the infinity of the present moment. Yeah. And this is why I refer to the wakefulness, level of wakefulness is like living explosively.
And that's also when you get the real inner peace, no?
There's that warmth within, that harmony.
Absolutely. I think if you ask me, love, yes, if you ask me, I think the only way to real happiness is that,
Remember, happiness isn't a fixed location. It's not a destination. It's a way of being.
Yes.
So if you want to be happy, be happy.
We put the link in the description. Gina's done an amazing job, I have to say. Fantastic. Beautifully written. You got a taste of it. There's much more in the book, but, we don't want to talk for 3 hours neither. And
we could do another occasion.
And maybe I finish this podcast with a little part from Nalani's forward. No? Mm-hmm. She wrote, life is a university where we learn who we truly are. Accomplishing that, we sing and dance along with the good and bad times and start focusing on the ways we can make our earth a more delightful place to live in. With this unconditional love for humanity, bliss overtakes our mere mortal minds and connects us to the divine grace that lives within us all. What a beautiful quote. Again, thanks Narani for that. Any final thoughts, love?
Yes. Believe in yourself. You are enough. We are all on the same boat. We all struggle. We all have fears. We all suffer. We all hit rock bottom. So open up, share stories, be humble, show your vulnerable side. A sign of strength, not of weakness. showing your vulnerable side has opened so many doors in my life.
Yeah.
And it keeps on opening doors. So keep true to yourself, feel your way through life, and walk in your power, wisdom, and light. Discover what your power is, because we all have superpowers. Claim your power, step into it, and continue walking in your power.
Nice. Now we're talking. Okay, never lose trust in the universal love. Thanks a lot, Jeannie.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
It was very nice. Goodbye, everyone. All the best to you.